Hi everyone, I'm Megan and this is Beguiled by Books, where I share short book reviews across a wide variety of genres. Today I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 best books in review. Let's get started. The books that I'm going to share with you over the course of this video are all 5 stars. These are my favorites, the best of the best. It is by no means an exhaustive list. These are the books that I have just continued to think about throughout the year. You'll find in the description a link to my full reading wrap up over on my website, as well as a link to my story graph where you can follow me and follow along all the books that I have and how I rate them and all of that fun stuff. But these, like I said, are the best of the best, my absolute favorites from 2024. So let's get started. In 2024, I read Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and this book had been knocking around my house for a while. I hadn't picked it up. I actually had not read anything other than a collection of short stories by Neil Gaiman before. And Stardust is a fairy tale for grown-ups. It's a little bit darker in some places, as a fairy tale often is, and it's just fun. It's a sweet, cozy, well-written, wholesome book. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. You will absolutely love it. I think about this book a lot. I want to reread it. I've kept my physical copy. It's just a really wonderful book that I think will eventually become a classic if it's not already considered one. If you've been following me for any length of time, you can already predict the next series that I loved from 2024, and that's the House Witch and the Burning Witch series. Absolutely no surprise to any of you who have watched more than one of my videos, but the House Witch and the Burning Witch is right now, I believe, a 7 book series, and it's cozy fantasy. It's so delightful. You can go back in the shorts on YouTube, on my social media, on any of the YouTube videos, and see how often I talk about the House Witch and the Burning Witch. But these absolutely live rent-free in my head. I cannot wait for more in this universe to come out, hopefully in 2025. But this was an absolute highlight from 2024, and I hope you get a chance to read it if you haven't already. A nonfiction book that I loved from 2024 is called The Comfort of Crows. This book is the author's sort of kind of memoir, sort of kind of observation of her world during the pandemic through the lens of the seasonality of the birds in her suburban Nashville neighborhood. It's really cool and lovely. It's short. It's also illustrated if you get the physical copy. I believe her brother is an illustrator, so it's beautifully rendered inside. Highly recommend a physical version if you can get one, because you will not want to miss out on those color images. But the writing and the prose itself is also beautiful and really helps you take a step back and appreciate your little bubble that you're in. No matter what your bubble you're in, you can find something hopefully to be grateful and positive for. In 2024, I read a book called Our Wives Under the Sea. In the spring of 2024, I was in a very, what I was calling short, weird girl fiction, where a lot of the books that I was reading were very short in length and had female protagonists and were just weird freaking books, just weird books. And I loved every single one of them that I read. But Our Wives Under the Sea really has stood out to me as a book I keep going back to as one of my favorites over the last few years. And I definitely think you should be reading it. It's a love story, it's a monster story, it's an underwater adventure story. Those 3 things probably don't make sense, but if you read the book, you'll understand how they come together. And it was so crazy. The author just released another book. I've already got it. I can't wait to read it. But yeah, Our Wives Under the Sea was definitely a highlight in 2024. Holly Jackson's The Reappearance of Rachel Price definitely made my favorite list of 2024. This is a standalone mystery novel, and as you've probably heard me talk about this in other videos, one of the things I loved about this book is that you already know the outcome right from the title. It's not a spoiler. The Reappearance of Rachel Price. So instead of the disappearance or, who did it, you know the outcome, and then you're working with the main character to put those pieces together to figure out what happened. Really interesting book. I think it could be an all ages read, probably like late middle grade and up. And I appreciated the slight turn of the traditional whodunit as you work backwards from that title. Really cool book. Holly Jackson's a fun writer. You will not regret reading that book. In 2024, I got to read the book Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. Now, Cal Newport is one of my favorite nonfiction authors. I love his philosophy and the type of writing he puts out into the world, which is all about kind of the software at our fingertips, the internet, the connectivity that we are all experiencing on a constant basis, and why that can actually be really detrimental to productivity. Some of his other books are called Deep Work, A World Without Email, things like that. So really that's his brand. And slow productivity is exactly what it sounds like. What are you doing to make sure you slow down so that you can actually ramp up your productivity? Great and fascinating take on this. You will not regret reading anything by Cal Newport, but definitely read Slow Productivity and start with that if you haven't read anything else of his yet. A book called Piranesi made my top books of 2024 this year. I did not expect this. It came out of left field. And again, it was one of those weird fiction books that I read. And I don't know if this is about time travel, if this is about imagination, if this is about an alternate world, if this is fantasy. I'm still very confused about what this book really is, but I loved every second of it. I was captivated by our main character. I was captivated by the world our main character was in, and the end was unexpected. I loved this book. I've recommended it to multiple people who have also loved this book. So if you don't have Piranesi on your 2025 reading list, add it right now. If you've been here before and you've watched any of my other videos or seen social media, you probably won't be surprised that my next book that I've got to recommend that was a highlight in 2024 was The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I've said this, I will continue to say this. If you don't like this book, you probably don't like joy. This is the sweetest, coziest, most wholesome fairy tale for grown-ups ever. It is a hug in book form, and I just love this, and I want everyone else to love it. I've recommended this book to others. I have yet to meet someone who didn't love this book, and it's just so sweet. You can gift this book to someone, and they will likely love it. It's a good go-to book. Reread it, read it for the first time. It's so sweet and wholesome, and it will restore your faith in humanity. A series I read in 2024 that I think absolutely deserves mention here is the Salacious Players Club series. Now, this series is about a BDSM club. It's a smut series. It's wonderfully delightful. It's a great fun series. You don't have to, it allows you to escape for a little while. And a lot of times that's what we need. The first four books are my preferred books of the 6-book series. I don't think you need 5 and 6, but this is a fun series. You will absolutely go right through it. It's really enjoyable and smutty and romantic and just all of the things, and definitely a highlight of my reads in 2024. A fantasy series that made my 2024 list is the Legendborn series. Now, there are 2 books out right now. The third one comes out in 2025, and I love these books for 2 reasons. One, we have a Black female character, which is often underrepresented in the fantasy genre, and we also have it taking place in North Carolina, where I'm from. So I love that combination of things. I relate very closely to a lot of the locations here in the book series. And it's really cool because it's also a hot take on the King Arthur legends. And it's just an interesting combination of characters and events and the fantasy and the magic system. Really loved it. I'm really looking forward to the 3rd novel in the series, and you should definitely add this to your list if you are a fantasy reader. Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite nonfiction authors, released his 3rd book in a 4-book Stoic Virtue series called Right Thing, Right Now. And of course, I have multiple copies of it. I have digital, I have physical copies. I think I have a signed copy that a friend sent me. It's a great book. I am a big fan of all of Ryan Holiday's work, but I love how concisely he makes his point. He makes his point, he makes it quickly with really accurate and historical real life descriptions and points. And it's really well done and well researched. You can't go wrong if you wanted to read any of Ryan Holiday's books, but I loved Right Thing Right Now because it's really about doing what's right, not just for the individual, but for the community, which is something that many of us have lost focus thinking about. So much individualism is present in the day to day that we forget how to help our neighbor. And Right Thing Right Now talks about both sides of that coin to make sure that we don't lose sight of one in favor of the other. A huge 2024 highlight is a book called Entangled Life. This book is all about mushrooms. I loved it. If you ran into my husband, he would be able to tell you exactly what book I'm talking about, what I'm always talking about to him, and how cool the fungal networks are. And I could just really nerd out. And a lot of it has to do with this book. It's really well researched. It's very funnily written. So it's not a dry nonfiction book. It's not a boring science textbook. It's really interesting and well done. Of course, you learn a lot along the way. And understanding these networks and how they play a part in our ecological systems is so fascinating. It will make you think about everything from the tiniest little microcosm of a mushroom itself to an entire field or forest or landscape of what's happening beneath what we see in the soil. Fascinating book. Absolutely recommended if you like nonfiction and you like to learn things. A 2024 standout novel for me was Starling House by Alex Harrow. I've read Alex Harrow's other books, very much enjoyed them, but Starling House is absolutely her best work to date. It's a quick read, which is important when you're very busy, but it's also very, very captivating. And Starling House dives into a poverty-stricken town where our main character is struggling to make ends meet, provide for her younger brother, and ends up taking a job at a very creepy house with a lot of haunted town legends. And then chaos ensues. There's an alternate world, there's a mythical, magical element to things. Really well done, very cool, and of course, a standalone novel. So you can read it and then you can be done with it. Definitely add it to your TBR if you haven't read it already. Of course, my 2024 highlights would not be complete without the book Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This book, just like some of the other ones I have mentioned previously, it's a hug in book form. It is a cozy fantasy that I absolutely love. There is romance, there is baking, there is a little bit of magical adventure, there's friendship, there's camaraderie. It's just a sweet, wholesome book, and you will absolutely love it if you enjoy wholesome sweetness. So definitely grab this if you have not already read it. It's really popular, so you are definitely missing out if you haven't read it. So read it as soon as possible and you will thank me, I promise you. I grouped the next two books together because they're so similar and play off of one another. And those two books are The Hacking of the American Mind and the book Brainwash. Different authors, but ultimately a very similar premise, which is how the ingestion of sugar and refined carbohydrates negatively affects both our physical bodies and our mental state. So one book has to do with the serotonin receptors in the gut and how serotonin struggles to make its way through the blood-brain barrier because of all these other things in the system because of sugar. And then another book is more along the lines of how corporations and large companies have altered food so that we ingest more sweet things and more refined carbohydrates on this quest for getting the dopamine hit that food provides us. These two books are really helpful in understanding that more holistic view of what's happening between the brain and the body and the food that we eat. A surprise book that made it into my 2024 top books is a book called Interesting Facts About Space. I read this right here at the end of 2024, and I was utterly delighted by it. It's a little chaotic. You don't know what's going to happen next. It's not a mystery. It's not a thriller, but it has those elements in it. It's not a love story, but it has those elements in it. And ultimately, you're just riding along with our main character. She experiences life through her neurodivergent way and experiences. Loved this book. I can't wait for more people to read this. It is absolutely delightful. Add this to your 2025 to TBR right now. We would not be complete without talking about Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is the third book in the Emily Wilde series that I absolutely adored. It's a fun adventure. It's a quick read. You will constantly be wondering what happens next. There's an excellent plot in the third book here. And if you haven't read any of the Emily Wildes, definitely start at book one, read book two. You need those two to really understand and enjoy book three. But once you get to book three, it's wonderful. You will love this series if you like fantasy, if you like a little bit of fairy mythology and folklore. You can't go wrong if you love those things. It's a great, great series. And the Compendium of Lost Tales is a wonderful lens through Emily Wilde's eyes as her scholarly self, is experiencing this new world that she's kind of gotten herself wrapped up in. Really fun book, highly recommend. What are your favorite books from 2024? Please comment. Please let me know. I always want to know more books. My stacks keep getting taller, and I'm ready to get lots of books read in 2025. So like I said, drop a comment with your favorites. And if you found a book you want to read from this video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and definitely check the description and the pinned comments below so that you can take a look at the course that I am releasing in 2025 about making your life better through books without actually having to read the books. You can sign up for early information on that course. I hope you've had a wonderful 2024, and I hope your 2025 is even better.